Good evening, I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharat Kutin.
Welcome to Consider This. Now, recently, news reports have highlighted that Malaysian students in international schools have now significantly outnumbered their foreign counterparts. So, Malaysian parents clearly looking for options other than the national education system for their children. We're going to be focusing on that on the show today. We welcome to the show Jeffery Beard, Director General Emeritus of the International Baccalaureate, as well as Vincent Chian, Principal for Fairview KL Campus, which Fairview International Schools are IB accredited schools. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Melissa. Glad to be here.
I would like to set the scene first, Jeffery, if I may, with you, with, I guess, a better understanding of the International Baccalaureate. I mean, for many of us who are not parents or who are not thinking about sending children to the International Baccalaureate system, could you explain a little bit what IB entails?
Sure. IB basically deals with primary and secondary education. It was founded a little over 50 years ago by a group of educators in Europe to produce a program that was, at that point with the Diploma Program, better than any national high school program in the world. Coupled with a need for international mindedness and understanding and appreciation of culture. This program was emanated out of the, after World War II, with the thought that if people could understand each other and relate to each other better, it would eliminate war. So that's always been part of the IB's ethos. Today it has 5,200 schools in over 140 countries around the world and is the premier educational program worldwide.
Well, that's so somebody from the IB program would say. But Vincent, tell us about the local trajectory when it comes to IB. What exactly did, I remember very clearly, decades ago that IB was with the international schools and such. But when did it actually arrive and what's been the take-up like?
Well, the IB, thank you for the question, Sharon. The IB has actually been around Malaysia for quite some time. In the diploma program, we have got one of the largest diploma programs in the world in Malaysia. Actually. As of recently, I think the Malaysian parents are looking for something different, something that's going to prepare their children for a very volatile and uncertain future. They know that whatever we've been doing before is not going to get us anywhere further than A to B. That's worked all this time. They need to know how to go from B to C, and they're looking for something that's going to prepare them for that future. Now, the IB is uniquely poised to do this because it was designed with that future in mind.
Right. So, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Jeffery, the idea is to be more well-balanced, right? And I think that's the, I guess, one of the main characteristics or identifiers when it comes to the International Baccalaureate. But it's also known to be very demanding, a highly demanding program. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think guilty as charged. It is a demanding program. It is challenging because it works with the whole child. It works with all aspects of human development. So it's not just the regurgitation of facts and figures. It's the involvement of the child and the teacher in a holistic experience that is designed to not only educate the child but to develop the character of the child over time.
Could you give us a bit of a few examples of what you mean by that?
Sure. I think in the primary year program, it's a transdisciplinary program. So the teacher will take different subjects, math and science or history, and be able to weave it together into a theme. And so the children may dress up for a play, they may act out, they may do calculations. The end of the primary year program, the students have to do a personal project. They have to put together a project. And they may do something on the ecosystems and say, I want to change the climate and the environment. And the children will go out and interview scientists, they'll interview companies about why they do this. They do primary and secondary research, they gather the facts, they work with their teachers to put together a project about why climate change is important. And they will make presentations to the parents of their projects. And so that incorporates a lot of different aspects of learning.
Okay, I imagine that many schools, or public schools, could incorporate things like this. I mean, we hear about project-based learning and so on and so forth. But but what I do understand, I want to ask you, Vincent, for this, which is that there's always been said that parents are concerned about outcomes, primarily about outcomes, and certification is really important to that. And so choices are being made on that basis, not on maybe things like developing a whole child, because their families, you don't need the school to develop a child necessarily. There are other institutions. What is the parent in Malaysia most concerned about? Are they sold on this idea of the holistic child, or do they just want good outcomes that will get them into a good university at the end of the day?
That's a really, really good question, Sharon. I think parents are divided. The most I've ever seen a parent proud is when they told me, my son did something amazing today. And he's usually not going to be telling me, oh, my son got straight A's on stage. He's going to say, there was a kid sitting really quietly in the canteen, and my son walked up to him, and they sat together, even though he didn't know the other kid, and he shared his food. When I speak to parents about what really makes them bloom and what really makes them go fuzzy inside and feel strongly about what they do, that it's right, it's not usually the academic. The focus on academic results, I think, it's something you can't negotiate. They need to get to university. I'll let Mr. Jeffrey share about some statistics about how IB students will get to universities at a far higher rate than all other students. And I'm a product of the A-levels as well. I feel the pain here.
You see, the thing is this, every system does that. They promote their best students, and any tuition center in any suburb in Kuala Lumpur and the Klang Valley does precisely the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
They all boast about the numbers in terms of success. But how are people to weigh the differences? Everybody's making huge claims on behalf of their pedagogical systems. Jeffrey.
Well, I think time will tell. The benefit of the IB, particularly their diploma program and going to university, is it's been around for 50 years. So there's been a lot of research done by outside organizations, done by different countries around the world, around how IB is effective in developing the student for preparation for university. And the statistics show that overall an IB graduate has a 22% better chance of getting into their chosen university than the general population. So the statistics, we were looking this morning at some of the top 25 universities in the United States, for instance. Harvard, which has a 6% accept rate if you just apply off the street. The IB student will have a 13% chance. Same way with Yale. University of Chicago has an 8% acceptance rate, but if you're an IB student, you have a 46% chance of getting in. The point is you have twice, 3 times, 4 times as likely to get into the university of your choice if you have the diploma.
So is it the certification? What is the differentiating factor?
The universities have found that these students are better prepared. They don't, the certification is nice. It's a stamp of quality to say, all right, there's something there that's consistent. But they find that these students come in better prepared to undertake university preparation. A school like Harvard will waive freshman year completely and say you can start as a sophomore because the preparation you have basically eliminated the need for some of these remedial courses that freshmen usually take.
Well, let's come back and touch on what it means to be better prepared for university. We're going to continue this conversation right here on Consider This. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, with me Sharad Kutan, and we're speaking to Vincent, Chian, Principal of Fairview KL Campus, as well as Jeffery Beard, Director General Emeritus of the International Baccalaureate. Just before the break, Jeffrey, you were talking about IB students being better prepared for university, and I want you to elaborate a little bit about what that means. What does a better prepared student mean when he or she goes into university?
Well, that's a good question, Melissa. It's one that schools and parents ask about. But in brief, the diploma program is a more comprehensive education package. You're going to be doing more education than if you do A-levels or if you do AP courses. First of all, there's 6 subjects that have to be completed over a 2-year period of time with the diploma program. 2 of them are related to the language, the primary language and a secondary language, so you're always required to learn a second language. One in individuals and societies. There's one on the maths, the sciences, and then the arts. So it provides a broad liberal arts education, and on top of that, each student has to do a 4,500-word extended essay on a subject of their choice, where they have to do primary and secondary research to write like a mini thesis. They all have to do 150 hours of a community service. And they all have to take a course called Theory of Knowledge, TOK, which is basically a philosophy course that deals with what is really truth. How do you know the truth about something when somebody tells you something?
And these are 16, 17-year-olds attempting to do this?
That's right.
Wow.
So these students know how to read, they know how to write, they know how to comprehend, they know how to relate. When they show up at university and the professor says the first day, write a 500-page paper about this subject, you're dismissed, come back on Monday. The rest of the students say, how the heck do I do that? The IB
this sounds like a PhD, actually.
That's right.
500
the
pages.
IB student says, I'm done it, I'll do it overnight.
Yeah, I do want to ask you, though, I mean, you're talking about the cream of the crop in terms of universities. So their demands on students are perhaps also exceptional, right? They want something exceptional in their students, and they're looking perhaps for the child that has that already, that roundedness that you talk about. Vincent, and again, most parents are not going to be sending their children to a Harvard or a Yale or a Cambridge or a NUS. I can boast about my own alma mater for a second. They're going to be sending them to a kind of mid-range university. Demands might be quite different, and how do you convince parents that this is in fact a winning strategy?
Well, I went to Manchester University, Cheryl, so I can really testify to the strength of a traditional education as well. But I would say that convincing parents on the basis of which university to go to might be a bit short-sighted. Because what we do in the school and what we do with the IB is we prepare people for a future, not for a tertiary education. Tertiary education is a milestone to get there. And we have to recognize it as just that. A lot of children today are going into vocational courses. When I was working as a doctor in the UK, a plumber earns more per hour than a doctor. So we really need to question, in the world of tomorrow, does the classic accountant, lawyer, doctor wisdom hold true that I grew up with, that our parents grew up with? Does that still hold true for the tomorrow's gig economy world, where people are earning far more per hour than traditional, well-timed, honored professions?
I mean, that's a really interesting point that you brought up, the idea of preparing for the future as opposed to preparing for tertiary education. I'm just wondering, in the local context, Vincent, are these conversations that you're having with parents, I mean, is this part of the consciousness of parents?
Yeah, because there's money involved, and Malaysian parents are very practical, return on investment. I'm putting, a good amount of money, and you maybe want to tell us how much the course costs at the end of the day, because they will want to see it in terms of what it's called the degree premium. You get a degree, your wages are that much higher because of it.
Absolutely. I think in terms of how conscious it is in our parents' minds, it's becoming more conscious. Parents are beginning to realize this. And yes, there's some education that is required. We do need to talk with the parents about these things. And let me just highlight one issue for yourselves. We are trying to prepare our children, our learners, for an uncertain future. And this concept of preparing for uncertainty is something that traditional education has blasted out of us. In every old school exam, there is a right answer. And when you're told there is a right answer for 13 years of your life, you don't go looking for the wrong answer. But guess what every successful entrepreneur does? They go around looking for all the wrong answers. And that's where they find the right answers. How do we exist in a world of tomorrow where there are no right answers, where you create the right answers? So in the IB, the assessment systems and the way that they talk and discuss with you does not focus on one right answer. It focuses on what is your thinking process to get to an answer, and let's consider, in the theory of knowledge that they do in the diploma program, your perspective on the right answer, my perspective on the right answer, and the most important part, how both of us could be right at the same time.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you could jump in there. Give us a broader, kind of a global context to the kind of conversations that parents are having, the people who are actually doing the investment. You work in the American context, in the British context. You told us you also spend time in China, a land of very practical people, we're told. I mean, that's a bit of a stereotype, but okay, let's go with that. Is it a hard sell to talk about the holistic child as opposed to something that has, certainties?
Well, I think the holistic child conversation usually comes second or third in the conversation. Most parents are, what's the best education? What's the best chance? How do I want my child to succeed? Is IB worth the money? Because in many schools, the cost of tuition can be very high. The IB doesn't set those parameters around what a school charges. A school is free to charge whatever they want. The IB's costs are very modest. So in the public schools, it's very affordable. The public schools are basically subsidized by the government, and there's really very small charges. In fact,
it's a non-profit IB.
IB is a not-for-profit organization, and it's in 140 countries of the world, and it's in more public schools than private schools. In the United States, there's over 20
public schools.
It's in, 2,500 schools in the United States. It's in UK public schools, Australia public schools. A majority of the students that are taking the diploma program today, I can say, are taking it for free, because it is supported by many governments as a way to help develop their future citizens.
Vincent, do you look at the Malaysian curriculum? I mean, are you having conversations that are broader than just your school, the community of international schools, and looking at that? I mean, is that something that you're concerned about as a psychologist, a trained psychologist, and educator?
Well, I trained as a psychiatrist, so it's slightly different. Okay. But yes, there are...
You can dispense pills.
I was a registrar, yes. I could dispense pills then. The IB is present in 10 Malaysian public schools that I'm aware of right now, and there's a couple more. In what way? It's in the public school, in the secondary school sector.
It's the middle year program, I think, that they have, not the diploma program.
So the equivalent of our PMR, SBM sort of arena. And a lot of public school children benefit from that, and it's, of course, it's public school, so it's free of charge. It's also present in a lot of our international schools, so in terms of, if you want options, it's there for you. The IB is very well regarded here and across the world, and I think in terms of value for money, you can either pay upwards of 200,000 for this in a year. The total figure can come close to $1 million sometimes, or you can pay a lot less for that.
Are you seeing a lot more Malaysian parents coming to Fairview now because of this?
I'm seeing a lot more Malaysian parents ask the correct questions. Less about how many A's am I going to get, and more about how do you prepare my child for tomorrow. Which is why I was sharing about, education is really important to help parents focus on the correct question. University isn't the end point. When they get to that first job, when they start succeeding in their career, when they find value in their life, that's what parents are beginning to start talking a lot more about these days. They want their children to have happy, meaningful, relevant lives. And a lot of them are really talking about this, and that's where we excel in shaping our children, because that's the conversation we have all day.
Right, so happy children, the therapists might go out of business, but okay.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation about what's needed in the education system right here on Consider This. Don't go away. Welcome back to Consider This. Miss and Sharad here. We're taking a look at the International Baccalaureate. We have the Director General Emeritus of IB here with us, Jeffery Beard. We also have Vincent Chian, who's the principal for Fairview KL Campus. Fairview is an international baccalaureate school, and there's been recent reports that have highlighted that Malaysian students in international schools now significantly outnumber their foreign counterparts. Vincent, is that the case in Fairview? Are there more Malaysian students than there are foreign students?
Thanks for the question. We have 5 campuses, and I think it varies slightly across the campuses. In my head campus, there are more expatriates than there are Malaysians. But in the other campuses, where there perhaps are fewer expatriates, for example, Ipoh or Penang, there are definitely more Malaysians there.
And I think in some ways, Malaysians want that choice. They want the ability to choose a pathway for their children that, in some ways coheres with their own sense of what the world is and what those values must be. Jeffrey, could you help us understand the idea of future-proofing education? It's a term that's expression that's bandied about. Can you actually do that in the way that the world is working so fast and changing, and work is changing, and so on and so forth? How do you do that?
Well, because it's changing so much, I think the IB is in a position to better prepare students, because it doesn't teach you a specific discipline, an art. It teaches you a way of thinking and evaluating to be successful in life. There's a saying that IB students and in the future, as they graduate from university, can not only you could move to a different country and survive, they actually thrive, because they know how to adapt. So they're better prepared. When they go to university, statistically, they will finish university more quickly than their counterparts within 5-6 years, and they're more successful in life. The research we've done has shown that their average salary will be higher. So it's a good return on investment.
Okay.
Can we just shift very
Sure.
quickly to the teacher, the IB teacher? What is it required? Because we have a problem. We have wonderful blueprints in Malaysia when it comes to education. The delivery of those ideals goes to primarily the teacher, right? What is the IB teacher like?
The IB teacher is different. He or she is exceptional. So we start with a teacher that's already certified to teach in a public school, and we change them. We have a specific pedagogy around teaching and learning. It's based on a constructivist theory that basically involves the teacher as a coach rather than being the disciplinarian and purveyor of knowledge, to have the child be involved with their own learning, to take responsibility for their own learning. So when you go into an IB classroom, there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of things going on. The teacher is facilitating things, making sure that the students are doing it. They will prepare things. And so the teacher enhances the ability of the student to learn on multiple different ways.
Right. What about the Malaysian perspective, Vincent? I mean, can we replicate this ideal in Malaysia, given, again, the talent pool that's available, and also kind of cultural nuances, right? I mean, I remember this deference to the teacher where you kept quiet when the teacher was talking. There was no such thing as banter in the classroom.
Wow. You guys really have great questions. I think different folks have different strokes. Some people are able to, some people are attracted to this ideal and some people aren't. I think out of respect, not everybody enjoys or would like to become an IB teacher. And I want to really, really respect that. But for the teachers who choose to embrace the philosophy that we embrace, we recruit people and we select them very specifically for their open-mindedness and their attitudes. We have a learner profile set in the IB, some values, which we interview our candidates from, and it's actually more important that they possess these values than skills or knowledge.
Can you name some of those values for us?
Being principled, open-minded, risk-taking, courageous, being a thinker, a good communicator. When we interview people, if your skills and your knowledge are amazing, but your values don't reflect the IB values that we need from you, there is a very low chance of you succeeding over the next 3 years while we have you. So we need to, first we have to interview for the right type of people with the correct value alignment. Once we get the value alignment, then we need to train very heavily. The sad part is the traditional education, traditional training of teachers in traditional teaching colleges very often mimic what we have done before.
Right.
But the pedagogy that the IB ask us to embrace is very, very forward-thinking and very advanced. So training teachers very often requires for us to tell them, look, you have to be ready. There's going to be a big mindset shift. Things like, can you teach people not by talking to them, sage on the stage, writing things down, but can you ask them questions, provoke them to the point where they're so desperate to learn, they just run and search for the information by themselves.
I think it's called the Socratic method, right? But
Yes.
That's right.
Jeff,
right.
tell us about, you say IB is 50 years old.
Yeah.
Has it evolved? Has it self-corrected? Has it found flaws in its own thinking and readjusted over that 50 years?
And you were Director General from 2006 until 2014, which is a significant period.
Yeah, 8 years.
Did it evolve during that time too?
For sure. I think it's evolved in fits and bursts and fits during that time frame. It took a long time to gain traction. You know, between 68 and maybe 1990, you had less than 1,000 schools. So as a not-for-profit, it was not sort of advertising, promoting it, but schools would be successful and then people would hear about it and other schools would be successful. So it sort of grew that way. When I came in, basically my role was to help it prepare for the 21st century, to scale, because we had, at the time I came in, less than 2,000 schools. And the big achievement was we're going to hit 2,000 schools. And the mindset was one around, well, it's going to stop. I mean, we were running it like a big school. And as it expanded, we were just adding on additional staff and trying to do more things from the center. So my job was to organize the IB around its 4 core competencies, to set up global centers in 3 parts of the world to take care of the Americas, Africa, Europe, and Middle East, and Asia Pacific, and to ensure that the alignment of the quality standards worldwide was consistent so that every IB school, no matter where you're located in the world, produces the same results. And the data shows that we've been very successful at doing that.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being on the show. That's all the time we have for this episode of Consider This. Sharad and I will be back same time tomorrow. We'll see you then. Good night.